Chapter 8. Helen Keller's The Story of My Life. Helen Keller was born in Alabama in 1880. When she was less than 2 years old, she became very ill. Although she recovered from her illness, she lost her eyesight and hearing. When Helen was 7, her parents hired a teacher for her. The teacher, Annie Sullivan, was able to bring Helen out of her dark, silent world by teaching her sign language. She learned to feel each sign with her fingers to determine the meaning. Helen Keller went on to become a writer, lecturer, and activist. Below is a passage from Chapter 4 of her autobiography, The Story of My Life, published in 1903. The most important day I remember in all my life is the one on which my teacher, Annie Mansfield Sullivan, came to me. I am filled with wonder when I consider the immeasurable contrasts between the two lives which it connects. It was the 3rd of March, 1887, 3 months before I was 7 years old. On the afternoon of that eventful day, I stood on the porch, dumb and expectant. I guessed vaguely from my mother's signs and from the hurrying to and fro in the house that something unusual was about to happen. So I went to the door and waited on the steps. The afternoon sun penetrated the thick honeysuckle that covered the porch and fell on my upturned face. My fingers lingered almost unconsciously on the familiar leaves and the flowers which had just bloomed. I did not know what the future held of marvel or surprise for me. I was full of anger and bitterness for weeks and felt deep fatigue in my body and mind. Have you ever been at sea in a dense fog, surrounded by a white darkness, while your ship groped her way toward the shore and you waited with a beating heart for something to happen? I was like that ship before my education began. Only I was without compass or sounding line and had no way of knowing how near the harbor was. Light, give me light, was a wordless cry of my soul, and the light of love shone on me in that very hour. I felt approaching footsteps. I stretched out my hand as I supposed it to be my mother. Someone took it, and I was caught up and held close in the arms of a person who had come to tell me about all things around me, and more than all things else to love me. The morning after my teacher came, she led me into her room and gave me a doll. The little blind children at the Perkins Institution had sent it, and Laura Bridgman had dressed it, but I did not know this until afterward. When I had played with it a little while, Miss Sullivan slowly spelled into my hand the word D-O-L-L. I was at once interested in this finger play and tried to imitate it. When I finally succeeded in making the letters correctly, I was flushed with childish pleasure and pride. Running downstairs to my mother, I held up my hand and made the letters for doll. I did not know that I was spelling a word or even that words existed. I was simply making my fingers go in monkey-like imitation. In the days that followed, I learned to spell a great many words, such as pin, hat, cup, and a few verbs like sit, stand, and walk. My teacher had been with me several weeks before I understood that everything has a name. One day, while I was playing with my new doll, Miss Sullivan put my big rag doll into my lap and spelled D-O-L-L. She tried to make me understand that D-O-L-L applied to both. Earlier in the day, we had a tussle over the words M-U-G and W-A-T-E-R. Miss Sullivan had tried to impress upon me that M-U-G is mug and that W-A-T-E-R is water, but I persisted in confusing the two. In despair, she had dropped the subject for the time, only to renew it at the first opportunity. I became impatient at her repeated attempts and, seizing the new doll, I dashed it upon the floor. I was intensely delighted when I felt the fragments of the broken doll at my feet. Neither sorrow nor regret followed my outburst. I had not loved the doll. In the still, dark world in which I lived, there was no strong sentiment or tenderness. I felt my teacher sweep the fragments to one side of the hearth, and I had a sense of satisfaction that the cause of my discomfort was removed. She brought me my hat, and I knew I was going out into the warm sunshine. This thought made me hop and skip with pleasure. We walked down the path to the well house. Someone was drawing water, and my teacher placed my hand under the spout. As the cool stream gushed over one hand, she spelled into the other word water, first slowly, then rapidly. I stood still, my whole attention fixed upon the motions of her fingers. Suddenly I remembered something forgotten. I thrilled at my memory and I learned another word. I knew then that water meant the wonderful cool something that was flowing over my hand. That living word awakened my soul, gave it light, hope, joy, and set it free. There were barriers still, it is true, but barriers that could in time be swept away. I left the well house eager to learn. Everything had a name, and each name gave birth to a new thought. As we returned to the house, every object which I touched seemed to quiver with life. That was because I saw everything with a strange new sight that had come to me. On entering the door, I remembered the doll I had broken. I felt my way to the hearth and picked up the pieces. I tried vainly to put them together. Then my eyes filled with tears, for I realized what I had done, and for the first time I felt repentance and sorrow. I learned a great many new words that day. I do not remember what they all were, but I do know that mother, father, sister, teacher were among them. Words that were to make the world blossom for me, like Aaron's rod with flowers. It would have been difficult to find a happier child than I was as I lay in my crib at the close of that eventful day and lived over the joys it had brought me, and for the first time longed for a new day to come.